What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Played Out Podcast, a competitive-focused Age of Sigmar podcast. My name is Kyle, aka Creator Gator, and I'm here with my lovely host, James. James, how you doing?
What it do, Kyle?
The spiders live.
The spiders, well, most of the spiders live.
The spiders live. Today we're going to be doing a little happy story, sad story, happy story. So we're going to be talking about the new Liberators. We're going to be talking about all of the models that are going away. And then we're going to be talking about army construction because there is a lot of stuff to talk about. So
kind of hot.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to talk about. So we're going to be relatively brief with a lot of the stuff. We're going to try to give you the exact information you're going to need when it comes to knowing what models are going away. And all of that background information and what's kind of staying for the short while that we're here. So
I don't want to be that guy where I'm like, I told you so is a strong phrase, but I'm batting pretty good when it comes to the army construction phase.
100%. There was a lot of stuff where I was like, oh, they're completely getting rid of battle line. That was something I didn't think was going to happen, but you were like, nailed it. Eventually, at the end, when we get close to the end of all the reveals being, and there's no reveals, we'll go back and basically tally up everything.
Yeah, who's got more points? We'll do the March Madness of who predicted AOS 4 better.
Yeah, true. I'm excited. It's everything we've heard so far. Obviously, besides the models going away, we've been pretty happy about. So.
Yeah. It all seems like for the sake of the hierarching decisions look like they're trying to take a lot of the bloat out of the game, make it more lean, and make the decisions that matter strictly tactical and not minutia of rules interactions.
100%. Yeah. So starting with the new Liberator models, they showed us the new Liberator model. It's cool. It's basically a Vindictor with a hammer, which you're either hell yeah, that's what I wanted, or you're like, why are you selling me the same model again?
Yeah.
It kind of depends on where you lie. The helmets are a little bit odd. I'm not going to lie. They're kind of that's the only thing in the model that I'm not a big fan of.
You don't like the helmets?
No, they have
far different from
they have that strip that goes right down the middle, which is way less sleek.
That's where they store their nose, Kyle. You don't know what their nose looks like.
It's
maybe
way
they need
less sleek. Actually, we do because they give us usually non-helmeted options. So. It's not they're all back in Squidward.
You're also true.
Even though they're when the model came out, everyone made a bunch of memes about handsome Squidward because that's kind of what the face looks like. He's got
the big look like handsome Squidward
first lips. But you can either build them with shields and hammers, or you can build them with dual hammers. We've had confirmation on social media that whether you build them with dual hammers or whether you build them with shields and hammers. It's the same war scroll, so it's not you have to pick different weapon options. The only weapon option that you get basically is 1 in 5 can take a Grand Hammer, which is the same weapon. It just has 2 damage instead of 1.
I love that.
Yeah,
personally, it's so
one of
nice.
Things, yeah, we've talked about it and we enjoy that specific change. I know a lot of people are like, it's not that confusing to just if it has a shield, it has +1 save. If it has 2 hammers, they get an extra attack, but. It's not.
I don't want to make that choice. Just tell me what it does. Makes the math easier.
Yeah. My thing is, it's very much a non-choice when it comes to these battle line because you would never ever take them with dual hammers if that was the rule because you want the shields. They're there to be.
You want a 3-up save.
Yeah. They're there to be a defensive buffer, a harder to get through screen. You know what I mean, or a harder to push off an objective. You know what I mean. Mm-hmm. So you're never going to build them offensively. So it's basically a dead kit. You know what I mean? So I'm full on board with the build the model exactly how you want it to look. And then it has 1 war scroll because we're all kind of in a realm of imaginary anyway. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm all in on Hammer Bros though. I like double hammers. It looks cool.
The double hammers do look cool.
Yeah.
What did Halo call him? He called him the what's a double quarter pounder?
Double quarter pounder. That's so good.
And people the scale of the hammers is kind of big. People were like, oh, they kind of gave him the Annihilator hammers. They're big and chunky, but listen, I think they're cool. They take up that 40 millimeter base space pretty well. So
yeah.
I'm all down with the new Liberator models. They also showed us like the 5-man kit kind of, but they didn't post it on Warhammer Community. They only showed us like one picture on the Warhammer Community, which was interesting.
It's the same pose.
It's the same pose.
Weird.
Yeah, and then later in like social medias, they released like pictures of like what
kit.
the 5-man kit looks like, and you're like, oh, that's cool. You know what I mean?
I think it's like I think they did a really good job with the sculpt. It definitely makes me excited to kind of see what the new box is going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that this is this is your new ground zero. You know what I mean? Like, I think that like Vindictors in the last box were kind of this is your battle line unit. There are a lot of other battle line units for Stormcast, and that'll come up in the next section as well.
Mm-hmm.
But it's nice that you're getting like not only are you going to get cool like heroes and probably some elite units, but you're also going to get like, okay, here's a lean, cool new Liberator model. It's not chunky and kind of like weird anymore, you know? And it's a nice like ground, like, hey, here's your Space Marine.
Mm-hmm.
New Intercessor, sir. you know?
Speaking of chunky, let's move on to the kits that are going away, because they revealed in a Warhammer article, Games Workshop released a list of kits that are being retired, and it is spicy. It got spicy real quick, because the big one is they're getting rid of Beasts of Chaos.
In totality. Yeah.
Totality. Just so I'll list off what they're getting rid of. They're getting rid of all the Beasts of Chaos, all the Blown Splitters, the majority of Stormcast Eternals that came out in first edition, and all of the Sacrosanct, what came out in the second edition launch box, in the Soul Wars box. They're getting rid of 11 Warcry warbands that used to be taken in Slaves of Darkness. They're getting rid of 16 Skaven kits, and then they're getting rid of 7 other kits.
Rip Spider Boss.
Rest in Pepperini's.
Rest in Pepperini's, Madcap Shaman, and Spider Boss.
Yeah.
I never owned either one of you, but hey, you did a good thing for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The big, obviously, the big thing that everyone is talking about is the Beasts of Chaos, and they basically said, when 4th edition launches, you're not going to be able to play them. You can take them to the old world.
Yeah, it's crazy because like I feel like, especially with this, like, hey, hey kids, your toys, they're in varying degrees of trash cans. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like they're like, hey, just as a heads up, Beast of Chaos immediately in the trash can. You know what I mean? You're gonna go play another game.
Yeah,
which is
and
wild.
That's the important thing that I kind of want to talk about a little bit, because I've seen a lot of discourse online, and the big thing is, like you said, there are different trash cans. So I think the most extreme trash can is
Beast of Chaos.
Well, not really. Well, that's not the most extreme. The most extreme, I would say, is the Warcry warbands, because they're not making them anymore, and they're not going to fit into Slaves of Darkness, and they're going to be playable as we know right now. We don't know any confirmation about this, but they're going to be playable in Warcry only. You know what I mean?
Wow, really?
Like that, they're not carrying them into what's it called? They're making room basically in the Slave to Darkness spot for their new Dark Oath models that are coming. And there's 2 warbands that is staying around that are more thematic and that they want to stay in Slaves to Darkness. I don't know them off the top of my head. But the Warcry warbands are 100% like they're not taking them in Slaves to Darkness anymore, and I would be surprised if they stick around Warcry for much longer, which is sad. Those models are amazing. You know what I mean?
They're really cool.
Thing.
They're very like thematic kits. Yeah.
Yeah, they're super fun. It was funny, like I was like, oh no, someone's thematic army with 60 like Splinter Fang. You know what I mean? And it's like, it feels like you just bought that box because it was good. You know what I mean? But
that's so funny.
I mean, we all do that. We all do that. I own. When we get to the Stormcast Eternals, I can walk us through like what I own. So you know what I mean? That's going away.
Kyle's rip list.
My rip list, yeah. And then, like you said, probably the next worst, if not the worst, in contention for the worst, is the Beast of Chaos. Their trash can is basically, yes, you can still play with your models, just not in our game system.
Yeah, you got to go play Old World.
Got to go play Old World.
Which is crazy. They just make that choice for you. Like, I get, it's nice that they, I wish they got into a different trash can than this. I wish they shared the same trash can as Bone Splitters.
Same. That's kind of crazy to me that they're not gonna stick around. Like, yeah.
Or like they don't get a little bit. You know what I mean? No. They're just like, get out. You know
directly
what I mean?
Go to jail. Don't pass go.
That's crazy to me. Like because it's literally like hey, I know that you, my loyal customer who owns 5,000 points of Beasts of Chaos, you know what I mean? And I've literally been playing them for years, like since the old world, you know?
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, well, I hope you missed it because that's where you're going. That's where you're going.
I hope you liked it because you're going home.
Yeah,
like,
I know.
It was kind of funny.
They literally have a timeline. It's like 3 months, you know?
Yeah.
Because no tournaments are going to be running third anymore, really. I mean, you can play like at your local game store in third edition, you know, and with your friends, like casually, you don't lose a ton. But like if you're in this game, again, we're a competitive focused podcast, but like if you're in this game to play competitively, which is it's a competitive, you know, it's a competitive
that's the realm that
game.
We live in.
Yeah. I don't know. You just kind of you're just gone. You got booted, bro. Like that's crazy.
Yeah, that sucks. The second trash can that is like probably the most okayest trash can to be in is Bone Splitters. And
my most okayest trash can.
They're kind of in the recycling bin a little bit.
Yeah, it is. Like you feel good when you put them in there, but it's like still kind of trash.
I don't know where it goes. You know what I mean? Like 100%. they whatever I put in the recycling bin, they just toss it in. So
yeah. Oh, can I tell you a very depressing story?
What's that?
So like,
you find out they go to the same place.
Oh, dude. So when I went to college. There was this like big initiative on campus. They were like, we're going to get like specific trash cans. Like I went to school in DC. They're like, no more styrofoam. Mm-hmm. We're doing a hard cut on that because there's a ton of styrofoam like takeaway containers from like the lunch hall. And but they did this thing where they put these trash cans. They like did away with like regular trash cans. And now it's like, okay, wait, there's 3 holes, right, in like the top of this box. And it's like waste. And then it was like plastic. And then it was like cardboard, I think, or like associated cardboard products. And I was like, wow, that's really cool. That makes me feel really good. And like I spent a lot of time like I remember every day I would be like, separating, like you put things. Dude, there is like I think I was like a senior. So I'd been doing this for like a year and a half. And like I was leaving lunch one day and I saw the dude open the bottom of the box and pull out a single trash can that they all feed into. And I was just like, oh my God. Damn, it really do be like that. Nobody gives a fuck, dude.
I've seen multiple video essays talking about like the dichotomy of wanting to care and then like the practicality of like, we can do this. You know what I mean? Yeah. This is what we can do. I'm sorry. You know what I mean?
Well, there's like legitimately like, I mean, not to literally tangent super hard, but like, renewable energy, like the most effective form of renewable energy is nuclear. Yes. And we use it for our like for different like, you know, boats and like other things. And the only reason that we don't really pursue it more is because there's like a huge stigma, you know? Like
there's like a huge stigma around it. And like, I mean, Fukushima kind of put the nail in the coffin with it, where it was like, oh, this is dangerous. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's true. Like when everything goes wrong, it's a problem. You know, like when there's a tsunami that's already like knocking everything down. And to be fair, that was like, I'm not saying it's foolproof, but I'm saying it's like one of those things like that's also old technology. Like,
we kind of have the answer. The answer is just like not the pretty answer. The answer like isn't the one that we the medicine isn't the one that we want to eat. You know what I mean? It's like not the one that is good tasting going down. So we don't, invest more into it.
Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, other than that, Bone Splitters. Bone Splitter.
Speaking of things we don't want to invest in, don't invest in Sacrosanct.
Yeah.
Don't invest in the Sacrosanct chamber. Yeah,
we should have, what's it called? I want to have a moment of silence for all those models that no one will ever get to put on the tabletop ever again. I'm sorry, Beast of Chaos.
It's okay. Rest in peace. Yeah. So the other trash can we were talking about, Bone Splitters and Stormcast Eternals, they basically you will get an index, and that index will basically be playable until the summer of 2025. So you get kind of a year and a half to play with them. They are not going to be good. Like if you're like a diehard, I only play Sacrosanct or I only play Bone Splitters.
First off, where are you?
First off. I'd like to shake your hand because I've never met you in my entire life.
Yeah.
The other one is it's not going to be good. You know what I mean? Their whole point is to encourage people not to buy these models. Like, do not seek these models out. Do not buy them. You know what I mean? Like, we don't want you to do that.
But you have a year.
After 2025, those are going to go away.
Mm-hmm. You basically have like a couple months plus a year because say summer of 2025 is when like that's going to phase out.
Yeah. As far as the 16 Skaven, they mentioned that many of those will be replaced, and I assume many of those were replaced, like things like Giselle's we saw in the trailer. So like those are likely going to get a new kit because I believe.
I think it's in the launch box. Like I think a lot of these things are in the launch box.
I think so too. I think like we already know that the potential. What's the gun? The gun that we already saw.
Rattling gun.
The potential replacement for the Rattling gun is already there. It'll probably be like a similar thing with the Salamander for the Saurus. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How they had a Salamander kit and then they got rid of it and then replaced it with like, hey, look, it's a Salamander kit.
Yeah, hey, it's the spawn of Chotek.
It's the spawn of Chotek.
And you're like, wait a minute, that kind of looks like a hot dog. I like hot dog. I know hot dog.
You just told me to get rid of that. But it's one of those things where they're getting rid of old models and replacing with new, but they don't have any confirmation on which ones are getting replaced. They just said that anything that doesn't get replaced will get a Legends War Scroll.
Nice.
And you're like, okay.
Thanks, dude.
Thanks. Yeah.
They gave the Salamander the Chilean sea bass method.
The Chilean sea bass.
Have you ever heard about that?
I have, yeah.
Yeah.
It's so like funny. A fancy name.
It used to be called like the like something like toothfish. Like it's something toothfish. Yeah, if you look at them, they're disgusting. Oh. But then they're like, wait a minute, if we cut these guys up, they taste pretty good. So they're like, how do we charge more for this?
Yeah.
And they're like, it's now Chilean sea bass.
Rebranding. It's a thing.
Rebranding. Yeah.
The fish got rebranded.
They literally did, dude. It's crazy. They're like Patagonian toothfish, I think is what it was called. Okay. And it's like it looks like a relicanth from Pokemon. Ugh. Like yeah. But hey, you pay $50 for it at a steakhouse or whatever.
And then there's 7 other kits that are going away, which are, I believe, fine cast / resin / old. Like you said, that's your giant spider, that's your madcap shaman, and some other ones. Yeah. But yeah, something I want to say. The Stormcast Eternals, right? Because that's the range I'm most familiar with. They mentioned 23 kits that are going away. Multiple of those kits have 2 or 3 different build options. So like the Paladin kit, you can build them 3 different ways and currently have 3 different War Scrolls, right? A lot of them, they only called out the hero that is going away, but that hero is part of a kit that is also going away. They also mentioned in the thing and didn't show every single one, which one of my friends had like a minor disagreement on because I was like, oh, they showed us pictures of every single kit that's going away, right? And then they mentioned, no, they said the entire Sacrosanct range. And if you look at the what has a Sacrosanct keyword, it's actually all of these. And I was like, oh, that's a lot more. You know what I mean? So there might be a lot more that are going away than are in those exact pictures. It might be a bit deceiving. You might be like, oh, wow, they lost 23 War Scrolls. That's crazy. You know what I mean? It's not. It's much more like 30, maybe 35.
Yeah. Because it's big. And it's like, it is one of those things like you do feel like, I think when we talk about it, especially in this podcast, like I feel for everybody. Like I didn't lose models, right? Mm-hmm. So like Kyle did. I didn't lose any models.
Yeah.
And I feel for you. Like that sucks. But it's like one of those things like when you think about like, and I think everyone that is upset and frustrated with the Games Workshop is 100% valid. Like, like you are validated in your feelings. Mm-hmm. You should be frustrated because they took away your toys. I don't think you should get rid of any models because I think legitimately a lot of these Stormcast ones are essentially going to get re-released.
Yeah, they're 100% coming back. Yeah, they're not going anywhere.
No, yeah. And a lot, like, I think that's going to happen with a couple, like, definitely with the, like, I think there's going to be a couple different sets of bottles that this happens with. So I wouldn't throw anything away.
No.
But, unless you don't want to play Old World with Beast of Chaos. I'm sorry.
Yeah, literally. If you're in that bucket, honestly, sell them because, like, I remember when Old World came out, Old World, that's kind of how their thing has gone. They said, we're going to sell you Tomb Kings and Bretonnians, right? These are the things that you can go and buy, right? here is a bunch of free rules to play with other models like Source Warrior or like, Saurians, you know what I mean? Like all these other factions that we will not sell you models for. It's basically like, these are rules for factions that you can play
There's
if
no
you
new
already
box.
own them.
Yeah.
I'm not selling them to you. So this is kind of in
Go
that
find
bucket
them.
of,
Yeah.
I'm not selling it to you, but you can play with them if you already own them. You know what I mean? Which I don't agree with that whole strategy. I think that strategy is weird. I understand it from a business perspective, and this is kind of like my conclusion thoughts, right? From a business perspective, I completely understand what they're doing, right? They're limiting the range of things they have to stock, that they have to sell, that they have to make, and all of those things that are in that realm that they're getting rid of are things that we're not selling well initially. That's
There's
why
supply chain reasons.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why they got rid of the old world initially, was because they're like they had a whole game system that they had to keep stock on. They had to support, they had to update rules for, and it was making less money than their paint range. You know what I mean? They had like individual factions in 40K that were making more money than the entire old world like fantasy game system. And that's why they basically like nuked it and remade it so that they could potentially make more money.
Yeah, I honestly think that's why they're doing a lot with the Warcry warbands as well. Like, and the Underworld stuff. Like, I think they're trying to like essentially like cordon stuff off in its own zone so they can like turn on, like they can basically like open the faucet more or close the faucet. You know what I mean? So
yeah, they're just like it's 100% stock and manufacturing. I mean, you're familiar with manufacturing. You understand how this whole concept works, right?
Yeah.
You understand how like
I work in injection molding. Yeah.
Yeah. Very similar, right? So you understand exactly how keeping these old molds around is a pain, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So like the sacrosanct stuff, you know what I mean? I'm losing at least 8 units that I have. Some of them I have multiple for. So like I have old Liberators, I have old Secretors, I have Castigators, I have like a real Knight Incantor, I have a real Lord Arcanum on Griff Charger. You know what I mean? Yeah. All of those things, they either just kind of like fell into my lap because they were part of like a free thing, or I specifically bought them for the rules, which is not the reason you should buy models. You should not buy models for the rules. You know what I mean? The Knight, I feel like anybody who owns a real Knight Incantor model, they either owned it before where it came in a box, or they bought it specifically because its rules are really good.
Yeah. You being able to just turn off one spell is really good.
Yeah. And I think like my hope is that with them reducing the amount of war scrolls we have to worry about, there's a lot less of, oh, I have to find this specific model that was made, 5 years ago and they currently don't make. And it's like, it's sold out everywhere. I can't buy it. My game store doesn't carry it.
Yeah, I could buy it from one guy on eBay. Game. Yeah, one guy on eBay for $100.
Exactly. And that's like, I understand. And like you said, like your emotions are valid. Like they screwed you. You know what I mean? They shouldn't have done this. They should have done hey, listen, we're not selling these models anymore, but all of these models counts as these units now. You know what I mean? That would have been the best way they could have done it.
And there's no situation. Like I do think that there's a lot of places you can still play with your models, like, and especially for Stormcast, because Stormcast are on the same base.
Yeah. So all Stormcast are on a 40mm base. Nobody knows what the exact model looks like. Like if you like brought in like Liberators, like old Liberators, absolutely nobody in the entire world is going to be like, oh, those are the old Liberators.
Those are the old Liberators. T.O. Can you come over?
Yeah. These models aren't valid. Yeah, I've like played against entire 3D printed armies at large tournaments, and everyone was like, that was really cool. You know what I mean? Nobody gave a shit. Like, you can still play with your toys. That your emotions are entirely valid, and Games Workshop absolutely screwed you over. But they didn't come into your house and like physically take your models away from you and crush them on the ground, right?
Yes.
So
just your hopes
and dreams, and your hope of getting Beasts of Chaos to number one faction at Nova or whatever.
I do think that there's a what's it called? There's something to be said though of the way. Like I don't like so. We've said this is the third time I think collectively we said this. Yeah. You are valid in your emotions. Yes. But that being said, asterisk, I do like the fact that they're like, I wish they were doing to Bone Splitters and the Stormcast models. Like, I wish they carried that to Beast of Chaos. So at least you have a year. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, hey guys, like just as a heads up, this is a thing that's going to happen. You know what I mean? It's not happening tomorrow, but we need to limit our range for like manufacturing purposes. And that's happening a year and 3 months from now. Like and I'm like, okay, well, you gave us a year of play. Like I appreciate that. I will no longer purchase any more models or add to my collection, or I'll try to sell my collection, to somebody that wants it. And like, I think it's a bad message to give, but I think that's like the best way you can give it.
Yeah. It's always going to be a rough Band-Aid to pull off. And I think a year and a half in advance, at least for those two specific factions, I think that's a decent like time window to give them. You know what I mean? What was the other? I had something else I wanted to say about the Stormcast, but I think you nailed it when you said like it's rough, it's hard, but a year and a half is pretty good.
There's no good way to give the news.
There's no good way to get that news.
Yeah, and I think that like giving you some time and being like, hey, you do have a window. You know what I mean? You have a window. You can enjoy the play, and like if it's like, oh, if you have 50 sequiturs for some reason, don't know why you would, but maybe you do. Hey,
someone won a tournament. Okay, so this is the problem. This is this is the problem with Stormcast, and this is leading into the point that I forgot earlier. So someone won a tournament recently with like 60 castigators.
What?
Because their rules are weird, right? Their rules are weird, and like because they're an old War Scroll, they're like they have weird-ish rules, right? Mm-hmm. And their points are like ridiculously cheap. It's a 4-up save with a decent shooting profile. You get 3 models for 90 points. So someone just took that and then just spammed the crap out of it, ended up winning a tournament. And it like that wasn't like the only list that was like that. Like someone in a Discord somewhere figured out, oh, this like shooting range attack per point is really good. What if I just spam a bunch of castigators? You know what I mean? And I don't like that. That's the Forge World problem that I have with 40k in 8th and 9th edition, where it was like, oh, this weird Forge World model that's like always sold out and is $300. Oh, it's like the meta, best tank available. 100%, so now you have to go find one. You know what I mean? Like that's how it felt. Lame. And I hate that. And I'm hoping people are very scared that they're like, oh my God, if they can get rid of 6-year-old Stormcast models, no one is safe. They can literally do this to anybody. You know what I mean? And I don't think that this, ideally, we'll see. In my opinion, I don't think this specifically is going to happen again. I think this was listen, we have to do something about the Stormcast War Scrolls. They literally said in the article, Stormcast Eternals have the most War Scrolls of any army in Warhammer ever. Like they said in Warhammer. So like in 40k,
100
like
plus.
Marines, yeah. Like this is an issue. We have to cull it. This is the best time to do it.
Yeah, I agree. Especially because you're doing a rules rewrite from the ground up, right? Like the best time, like they basically went through and like one of the reasons that I think it's like, again, and I feel like I'm making a lot of excuses for Games Workshop, right? But like
we're not Games Workshop defenders.
No, I don't work there. They don't pay me. I pay them a lot. But it's one of those things that when balancing a game, right, the more factors you can remove, like let's say like, I don't know, League of Legends, right? Like League of Legends has however many champions, like a ton. And there's not really like a time there where everyone goes out of play, but like the way that you play the game, I feel like is much more linear than this game. You know what I mean? Like, and like you can kind of like, instead of completely like they do rework champions sometimes, but like a lot of times it's like buff the damage, change the items, buff the damage, or like move, like they like basically like tweak a couple knobs to like buff and nerf champions, right? In this game, it's not only like, oh, you're not like just doing damage or taking damage or like, CCing. It's like, oh, there's, objectives that you have to do. There's like, there's not actions in this game, but it's like there's range damage, there's like saves, there's mortal wounds, there's, there's a lot more factors that you have to balance when trying to create a holistic competitive game. And if you have to go through the Stormcast faction and basically like you have to do that for every War Scroll, like every single War Scroll, it's 100. It's going to take you the same amount of time to do 5 other armies. And it's like, and I honestly think that's probably some of the reasons that they get like the shit end of the stick sometimes is because like they
just play it safe. With the words. Such like, I don't want this to be an issue, so I'm going to make 100%. It on the lower end
because there's too many combinations. You know what I mean? You're like, I don't want anything to be busted, so I can't make one thing really good, because if I make one thing really good, then it's like, or if I make one thing kind of good, that's a buff piece, it might get broken with other stuff in the army.
League does this all the time. Then it was a much harder case back when they had a lot of ancient kits. So like one thing that I remember specifically was AP Scion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And AP Scion was an issue where it was like, because he had this ancient kit that still had AP ratios on his like shield blow up and his stun, right? That he used to have. So people would just basically, once they realized that was a play style that they could grab and just abuse, they did it. You know what I mean? And it was one of those things where it's like, yeah, and that happened because he was basically on a back burner of, yeah, technically you can still play him. He's not, squatted, but he's in this realm of nobody plays him, so we're not going to pay attention to him. And that's kind of how, like, the more of those things that you have in the wild, the harder it is to balance.
It gets janky, and this game like has, it's easy for stuff to fall by the wayside when you're trying to manage like new seasons, new like realm rules that are merciless Blizzard.
I'll post a meme that I posted in our Discord and on Reddit, and like it got a lot of upvotes. Like it got like over 500 upvotes in like the Age of Sigmar thing, Age of Sigmar like subreddit. But it was one of those things where it's like immediately after the article was posted, somebody commented was like, "This aged like milk on a radiator." Because it was like, oh goddamn! I didn't realize like I thought they were gonna get rid of like some knights and some lords. I didn't realize they go through and get rid of paladins. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like all of the main shit. Again, I think it's necessary in the long run of the game. It does feel bad for anybody who has a full sacrosanct army. But if that is true, where have you been? Have you been playing? Because I haven't seen you.
Sleeping?
You've been sleeping? Because like.
Dragonwing new hotness that hasn't been called.
Yeah, well, no. It's one of those things where like you see, we follow the tournament results like every week. We watch those honest wargamer stuffs. We see like, all right, what do the upper stormcast look? It's either some weird jank or it's dragons
or Dragonwing.
You know what I mean? If you're out there with your only sacrosanct army, I haven't seen you. I'd love to shake your hand. You know what I mean?
I haven't seen paladins in a minute. Like. Honestly,
yeah. I almost bought $100 worth of paladins because again, I wanted to buy them for their 2-up save. I didn't want to buy them because I like their models. I thought their models looked dumb, and I don't want to give them their weird spears that give them the 2-up save. But guess what? 2-up save is good.
2-up save is just good. Math good.
Yeah. But any final conclusions on kits going away?
Rip. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys.
See you guys. We just talked about that. I don't know what it's called. There's a TikTok trend now where it's like your friend has like an outro and it's like you're just like hanging out and it's like super hyped dubstep in the background and he's like, all right, guys, see ya. And it's like a drop. It's like super cringe. It's so funny. It's so funny.
I haven't seen it yet, so I need you to send me that so I can understand the context. But moving on to the next slide. So this is the April 3rd article. This is where they talked about army building. And I know we spent way too long talking about ancient models, but that was kind of like that was
kind of the hot topic of today.
It's kind of the hot topic. That's the thing that everybody's emotional about. Everybody immediately stopped talking about army building as soon as everyone realized like Games Workshop was going to literally break into their house and crush their models
and hurt their feelings.
So James, walk me through this slide and tell me how this regiment system works.
So it is very similar to what I was talking about.
I know
in our predictions video, where Games Workshop is now being a lot more lenient about what you can bring and how you want to bring it. Right? We said at the beginning. They have, I don't know if this is in a later slide, and I don't want to say it beforehand. They have abolished battle line. That's not a thing anymore. It's gone. You know what I mean? Like you have no more requirement, right? So in 1,000 point currently, I mean, if you listen to this podcast, you know how competitive Warhammer Age of Sigmar works. But 1,000 point game, you got to bring 2, and 2,000 point, you got to bring 3 battle line units, right? Yep. Those are normally troop units. And certain things count as battle line in, certain armies. But they've abolished that. So now you no longer have to pay the tax of battle line when building an army, right? You can really just kind of make it the flavor that you want. So essentially the way this works is your army is now constructed of regiments that you, that require 1 hero and either 0 to 3 other types of units or 0 to 4 if your general is included in that regiment, right?
Yep.
So, and certain like all regiments are a single drop, right? So it's basically like, oh, like if I have each regiment is a shopping cart, each shopping cart gets one hero. Potentially, there's some rules that will mess around with that. And it gets 3, 2, or 4 other units, right? So like if I want to just bring Annihilators, you know what I mean? Or I just want to bring Kroxigor, I can bring like whatever the associated leader is with Kroxigor and then just literally Kroxigor spam, you know?
So that's something to note is they did say like in your regiment, you basically have to, when you throw a hero into the regiment, important note that it's 0 to 3. So you can just take a regiment that is just
that hero,
if that's all that you want. But if you want to fit other like units into that regiment, like that 0 to 3 category, they have to fit the specific like that hero has to be able to lead that unit. You know what I mean?
Like it'll basically be rules tied from the hero to the other units in the game, and it'll tell you how they can be included.
Yep. I'm very curious to see how that works because it's not in the next podcast we'll talk about War Scrolls because they also talked about that on Friday. But they didn't say that on the War Scroll, at least on the front side. It might be on the back side like it is in 40K, but we haven't seen that yet.
We haven't seen that yet. I think the War Scrolls that we got there's a lot that's omitted on purpose.
Potentially.
Yeah. We'll like I think that they just did the rules. Like I think there's some stuff in there, we'll get into it, that I was looking for that I didn't see. So essentially like something to remember from our last podcast is the amount of drops you have is still indicative of choice in like who goes first and who goes second, right? So you do want to cut down on as many regiments as like you want to have the least amount of regiments possible. You know,
an important note about that is basically because you can only fit like I think it's 5. You can fit 1 hero,
5 max,
4 other units. 5. That is the max amount of units you can bring to be a 1-drop. So basically, the only people who are getting a 1-drop is Gargants.
Yeah,
I think everybody else.
I mean, like even if you bring like Karazai, and not that you could bring Karazai and Krondus in the same regiment, but like if you bring Karazai, Krondus, and then like maybe like 2 dragons. Like 3 sets of 2 dragons or whatever it is,
It's so that's going to be interesting because I think it was easy-ish to get a 1-drop in 3rd edition. If you specifically wanted to do it, most factions could do it. You could find a way to do it. Now it's like almost impossible. I feel like everybody's going to be a 2, potentially
2 or 3
drop.
Yeah. So it's going to be a roll-off in many cases. Like if you're vying, and this is all speculation, but if you're vying, not all speculation, but if you're vying for that low drop count, like it's not just I have a 1-drop, like 7 out of 10 times I'm going to go first, or I'm going to go whenever I want to go,
Yeah, basically. So we talked about how they give the example of like Venari Bannerblade can lead Venari units. So they just have like that capital Venari, you know what I mean? So I assume there will be a lot of keywords with that where it's like maybe not keyword like soup, but it'll kind of be I don't know where these will be, but they'll probably be in categories. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Like it'll basically every unit in the game will be basically put into like have an associated word. It tells you essentially what regiments it can fit into. And then it'll be like, oh, this leader can lead, these types of units like Kroxigor or Skink or, Saurus or whatever it is, I think it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, definitely. When we get to the next podcast, we'll be talking about War Scrolls, and we'll get more into that because I think there's some clues in that. But the next one they talk about is unique faction leaders can often lead any units, which is great because that opens up a lot of list building options. So like you could take maybe like one regiment that is fully your trogs and it's led by one of your trog bosses. And then if you want to take a bunch of your Boingrots and your Spiders, you can throw Scraggart in there and he can potentially lead all of those. You know what I mean? We don't know for sure, but like he's the faction leader of the thing. So
yeah, like he's and that's kind of how it works now. Like when I include Scraggart on the list, I can make Boingrot's battle line, and it's like it's just an add-in to have Scraggart in your list. So it wouldn't surprise me if Scraggart, not Archon, because Archon's a like big god, but Catacross,
Yeah,
like a
basically people who
Bastion. Yeah,
Bastion, yeah, someone who's like tied to this specific faction, and they're
yeah,
like the named character of the faction.
yeah. They're like the war leader or war
Yeah,
master. Yeah, whoever would
yeah,
be considered the war master is like the person that will give that buff. Which is like it's not an auto include in every list, but it's a very common model to see.
hmm
You know.
yeah. And they also said in rare cases, heroes um, can lead regiments that include other heroes. So they called out the mighty Lord of Corn can lead Gore Trojan heroes. And I basically just looked that up, and it looks like to me the Lord of Corn is like a foot hero, and then the Gore like other Gore Trojan heroes are like other foot heroes. You know what I mean? That you would typically take basically, but you wouldn't want to like have a regiment for each one of these like around 100
Single
150
drop.
point
Yeah, 100% foot
models.
heroes. Yeah.
So
And I think that's going to be nice too, because then it doesn't feel like you're getting punished for like buying into buffs that it feels like your army kind of needs.
yeah,
You know?
true.
So, next slide.
Yep.
So reinforcing units, right? They change this, which I think I love this rule. I like that you can't double reinforce, or you can only double reinforce, single reinforce now. You can only single reinforce two, not three.
It changes the game immensely because no longer the number is like I think the number has been 60, right? So like
Yeah.
it's like you could take like 60 skeletons, and that was the basically like the end all be all of defensive stats is can you do just raw 60 wounds even if they have no save, right? And then they have wards and saves on top of that. You know what I mean? So like I think bringing that down a little bit will definitely help where it's like 40. Now it's 40, which is much more potentially doable.
Yeah. And you can reinforce as many units as you want. So it's not
I
like,
love that.
Yeah, there's no restriction on it anymore. So it's not like, which is nice because I feel like you could kind of reinforce stuff once before anyway. But it's like, again, they omitted battle line, right? So it's like double reinforce isn't a thing anymore, but so is battle line. So it's kind of like everything is now brought to the same level, which is nice. Makes things, again, like I think a lot of the things that they're doing are to like make it more simple. You know what I mean? Like, let's just do the math so that we can like, instead of like having a couple different factors in the ways that like units can change and like efficiencies can change, like let's bring everything to the same level. And then like we'll change abilities and points and, certain things that the models can do and when everything's on the same level, you know? Battlefield roles. Yeah. Battle line behemoth are gone. Right.
Which is great.
Awesome.
I like it.
Play with your toys.
It only felt bad. Like basically every faction that had something where it was like, oh, they have a bunch of behemoths, like your spider, they had a way to make it battle line. So it
not
really
these
matter.
Ones, not my naked boys,
not the naked spiders. Yeah, so that was
they gotta
also
have goblins on it.
Yeah, I can see both sides of the coin where like that is a measure that they could use to balance the game, but more often than not, it felt like that picture where it's like a gate, right? Like in front of it's like a gate in front of a road, but there's no like fence on either side of the gate.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like you could just go around it, and there was like so many ways to just go around it. So I don't think like people will be like, oh well, they're losing a way that they could balance the game, but they didn't really use it anyway. So
no, they didn't. There was like, again, like if I want to take, I think it did the math. If I want to take 9 spiders, I can take 9 spiders. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Nothing's stopping me.
You're not stopping.
Yeah. Auxiliary units is new, and I think it's interesting. So basically, the way auxiliary units work are if you want to bring another unit that's essentially not attached to a regiment or doesn't require like a hero, you can bring it as a quote unquote auxiliary unit, right? And that goes below your, like, I'm sure Kyle will pull up the graphic, but it's like essentially like you have your list of regiments, and then under that you have lists of auxiliary units. It's just additional things that you're bringing along, right? And each one of those is a single drop.
Yep.
So another
one
thing, it adds
per
up.
unit.
1 drop per unit.
Adds up very quickly.
You can take as many as you want. There's no restrictions. So if you want to have 18 units in your army and they're all auxiliary, no one's stopping you. But a funky rule with that, right? And I think this is also nice for the game is your auxiliary units, whoever has less determines who's getting an extra command point every round, right? So if like me and Kyle are playing and he has 2 auxiliary units and I have none, I get an extra command point every round, similar to the way that like the person going second would get an extra command point at the start of the battle round, which is just like, I can't imagine, like, I don't know what units are worth,
Yeah, no, it's like people. We're coming to this kind of late, which kind of feels funny because what is today? Today is the 6th, and this was posted on the 3rd, so like we're getting to it kind of late.
Yeah.
But people have talked about this a lot, where it's like, okay, well, you can technically build your army however you want, right? But from a competitive standpoint, they force you into this box of you want to be in regiments, you want to be low drops on your regiments, you don't want to take any auxiliaries.
Yes.
Which I feel like giving your opponent 5 command points is going to feel really bad.
Oh yeah, the whole game, especially because they keep stressing the command points, and we don't know how they're more scarce, but like they stressed it like it's a very scarce commodity in the coming edition.
100%. Yeah, so that is going to be one of those things where it's like most people are going to take 0 unless there's like no option but to take them, right?
Yeah,
and then they will take 1 or 2. And then, or they'll lean into the, I don't care, I'm just going to give you command points, I'm just going to live with it. You know what I mean?
But I do live in a world where I'm like, I don't think that you necessarily need auxiliary units because the regiments are so open, I
agree.
Like, I feel like you're kind of like, like, I don't really, like, I soup gits, and even in my soupy gits, like, I can very clearly see how I would put things together in regiments, and it'd be like, I'd probably be an all-regiment army,
Yeah, very true. Yeah, I don't see it going to be a massive thing. I think it's more of a, if you want to play with specific toys, you can technically play with specific toys,
which is nice. It's a quality of life thing that I'm glad that they're putting in the game.
Yeah, I agree. I think the 5 command points is a little bit punishing, and I think it is like forcing you to build one specific way. But I don't really care about that specifically. It doesn't like bug me.
Yeah. Speaking about command points.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, move on to the next thing. So another reason that this becomes more powerful is because they've repeated it's much more scarce, much harder to get command points. But 2, there's no more units that just give you command points or give you a free command. You know what I mean?
Yeah, they say give additional command points. They didn't say
make command for free.
Make command for free, which I'm
is
like,
what I get.
That's the problem, though. You know what I mean? Like, that's not only is it like it's annoying, it's hard to track because you're like, oh well, he's just going to do his one for free.
Oh yeah,
and then you have to figure out like, did he do it already?
I frequently rally just to get rid of it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I'm like, I don't want to track it. Like I just want to. I'll rally something. I don't care.
Yeah, because like I do hope that they like pull back on that lever a lot, because I definitely have had games where like I haven't really been thinking about command points or like building in a specific way to get command points, whatever. Or like we'll be going first, so I'll only have 2, and then I'm facing you, and it feels like you have infinite.
Yeah, basically don't have to track my command points because it's like, hey, I don't shoot in the shooting phase really,
Yeah.
So it's like all my command points are spent in like the hero phase if I want to rally, or if I want to like. All out attack, all out defense, insane bravery, and I never run out because I have 3 to start with, like.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see what they do with command points. I'm interested to see where the command point system goes and what you can spend it on. So,
yeah, I think it needs some reining in. So I'm excited to see kind of what happens. But sub factions, battle formations, refocus it. This one kind of confused me. Do you want to take this one?
Yeah, sure. So basically, they're in all but name, they're saying, hey, we're kind of doing what we did in 40K 10th, where the first thing is we're decoupling a faction from a color scheme, right? So, like, you can still play as Hollow Knights, or you can still play as, like, Hammers of Sigmar, right? And you'll see, like, the battle formations will basically be like, this is a way that you want to play, right? But we're separating that way that you want to play from a named faction. So they kind of did the thing that everyone already did anyway, which is paint your models how you want them and play them how you want them. You know what I mean?
You just tell your opponent what you're playing. You
just tell your opponent what you're playing. So instead of playing Hollow Knights, you're going to play, I'm playing, whatever Redeemer battle formation that I'm playing. You know what I mean? I'm playing like the foot slogging battle formation of the Stormcast, or I'm playing like the dragon battle formation. You know what I mean?
And so battle formation is just a different name for subfaction, essentially.
Yeah, it's hard to know the difference, but basically like the big thing is they're trying to get away from they're trying to make it a way that you want to play instead of a named lore thing and like the little bonuses that you would get for your like specific units that faction is known for, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
we'll definitely see more about it. I think like if you know anything about 10th of 40k, you'll know much more about it, you know what I mean? So we kind of have to wait and see. That's kind of like we can speculate till the cows come home on that, but I think we'll wait and see on that.
There's more to come. Yeah, they kind of just mentioned it in the article. It wasn't like a main focus point.
Yeah, the big thing for me was they like now both main games that they officially said paint your models how you want them and then play them how you want them, which is something that like again I got into this hobby in like 2019, right? So I'm like really new comparatively. But that was something that gave me analysis paralysis forever. I could not decide whether I wanted to paint my Space Marines blue or red. And I was like terrified that I would paint them incorrectly and they'd be stuck playing one of those ways. You know what I mean? Which isn't a thing anymore. And obviously like I shouldn't have worried as much as I did, but like I'm a WYSIWYG person. I want my opponent to be as like have as much clarity when they're looking at my stuff as possible. I don't want them to feel confused and angry at me about it. You know what I mean? It was all like in that realm of I don't want the other person to feel like I'm screwing them over. So now it's officially, I don't have to worry about that anymore, which is great.
Yeah, you just talk about it. You're just like, hey, here's my list. Dude, every time, like, and we did this before the last tournament, right? I printed out like versions of my list so that I can hand my opponent and be like, hey guys, this is my list. You know what I mean? Like you can look it up on the app if you want, but here's like literally a hard copy. If you have any questions, just ask me, you know? Yeah. I think it's also just better game interaction too. Like just as like a blanket rule. Like try to be as transparent as physically possible. Like obviously you don't have to tell them how to mess you up, but like if there's like, you know, I'm like, hey, like my army kind of does this thing where like I get to like, you know, after I fight I get to run away, you know, like just as a heads up, you know, and then they're like they can ask the intelligent questions of like, is that a command ability? Is it a spell? Is it a, you know what I mean? Because then they'll know how to interrupt it, you know?
Yeah.
And it's not like try to be as transparent as you can for good game interaction.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. You want to give them the tools so that they can make the proper choices, right?
Yes.
You don't want to you don't want to come in and tell them this is the choice that you should make. And sometimes you can, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I usually tell people like, these are my hammers. These are my shields. I always hand them my long strike and my storm drake guard. Like I hand them the war scroll cards and say, these are the two things in my army that do damage. Everything else is like not really damaging. Yeah. You know, just so they know what the scary thing is. Mm-hmm. So they don't get hit by it and they're like, how dare you?
What? You smack me in the mouth like this?
Yeah. The other thing is heroic traits are being replaced by command traits. They just can be given to any hero, not just your general, which I always thought
artifacts
that was weird.
Can be given to any hero. You know what I mean? Like why are...
Yeah, I know. I always thought it was weird that it was like, oh, these specific things can only be given to your general?
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know. I'm glad that is, again, it's play the way you want it. You know, play with your toys the way you want to play with them.
I'm really glad that's going away because that was just like a confusing thing. That's just like, it was one of those things where it was just a confusing thing for no reason other than they could potentially balance it in that way, shape, or form, but they didn't. So it didn't matter.
Yeah. And then the last thing here is manifestation lores.
Yeah, they mentioned shiny new manifestation lores, which in my mind, that's endless spells.
That's just a new name. That's a new hot dog, baby. That's a new.
Yeah, I think like they might be that just instead of calling them endless spells and invocations, they might just manifestation lore. That just might be a thing.
Cool.
You know what I mean? It's in a broader bucket so that they can write rules for the broad bucket and not for the specific bucket. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Do you think they're gonna like meld like? Because it still says lore, so it makes me think it's locked to spells, not invocations. Or do you think they're going to meld them both?
I think it's going to be. I have no idea. I have no idea how they're going to do this. I mean, we've seen war scrolls now, so typically, like endless spells have war scrolls in the world that we live in right now. So, I could definitely see them all being under manifestation lore, right? And then it just being like, you know, these specific manifestation lores come from a priest. These specific ones come from a wizard.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I can
and
see that too.
that being the end of it. You know what I mean?
True.
I'm very curious how they're gonna do
Dude,
endless
the end of this
spells.
article felt very much like, here's the content, and here's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. It's like the after credit scene of Marvel, where
Yeah.
like they like pepper you in a bunch of stuff that's like, ooh, this could be coming, you know, or this
Mhm.
is coming. You don't know when though.
Yeah, this article was like, I was surprised at how chock full, um, what's it called? I'm surprised with how like chock full of information it was for what it was. You know what I mean? They gave us good infographics, which like I've shown on the screen, where they talk about like player one, player two. Player one has 4 drops and has 1 auxiliary unit. You know what I mean? Player two has 5 drops and has 3 auxiliary units. We all know now player one is going first because they have less drops. Also, player one is getting +1 command point per battle round because they have less auxiliary units. You know what I mean? So it's like they very clearly show us the breakdown of how it goes, and you're like, damn, I like that. Like, it feels good when you tell me that, and don't give me like a paragraph of words
where there's like a picture, and then there's like a guy riding a dinosaur, and you're like, all right, you can have 2 guy riding dinosaur, 3 guy on ground, maybe 1 shooty boy, maybe 1 big dinosaur by itself.
Yeah.
Big dinosaur.
Oh my god, that was. I don't think that was like confusing. It wasn't confusing until this GHB.
Do you see like a better product?
Well, I mean, it was. But like this GHB, they specifically said like they used, I don't know, it was either the Vigilor or the Vindictor like silhouette, but it was different than the other Vigilor or Vindictor silhouette that they used for the other one. Like it was the same silhouette, but like in the little asterisks, they just had like that silhouette equals something different. You then like it does in every other like battalion,
confusing.
and you're like, okay, I get it, but I did have to read it 3 times, and that was annoying.
Yeah, I think this is better.
Yeah. In conclusion, what do you think of the new army system?
I think it's great. I think you get to take what you want. It feels more thematic because you're pairing it with things like it doesn't, but it's not. It feels more thematic that you're pairing like you know annihilators with the annihilator with like Lord of Periton. Yeah, exactly. Like it's like you have to bring them together anyway to really get any value. Yeah. And now it's like, oh, you like to get them in a 1 drop, you do actually have to bring them together. It feels more impactful that you're doing that. Yeah. And if you don't want to do that, if you want to bring, your dragon army and then just like pepper in like a squad of Grand Hammers just to bring, you can do that, Yeah. And it's you can play with the models that you have, and especially with people that have been playing this game for a while and you have such a wide range of toys that you want to play with, like it's nice to be like, I can do whatever I want, Like
that's spicy to say in this episode.
What?
You can play with the models that you want.
Oh no!
Especially if you have old models.
Yeah, that's a big rip. That's a big. Again, I am the first person to say that they did the Beast of Chaos dirty, but like at least for the rest of us, it's gonna look pretty nice.
Yeah, I definitely like this system. I think they made it like people are like, oh, but they really make it simpler, and I'm like, yeah, they did. You know what I mean?
People
like,
in this hobby are so negative.
I know people are so negative, and I get
They're
it.
Like Games Workshop, why are you doing this? You're taking everything away from me. And I'm like, if you read it better, you'd understand that they took your advice from 3 months ago and implemented it in the game to make it better.
Yeah,
and they're like, but Games Workshop.
You're never gonna make anyone happy in this hobby, especially with this specific game. Like, I feel like the general, if you just walked up and talked to like a random person on the street who plays 40K, they're going to be like, it's fine. It's whatever. You know what I mean? It is what it is. Right. But if you talk to like a random person who like plays Sigmar, they're either going to be in the like competitive casual mindset of like, I'm bringing beer with, like, I'm bringing a 6-pack to the game with me. Oh, yeah. Right. Where they like, I don't care. Or they're like, yeah, I burned my army at the end of Warhammer Fantasy, and I hate Age of Sigmar. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I feel like that's the only 2 paths that I've like seen so far. So, this specific game was built in the like forged by the fire of people burning their models. You know what I mean? In 2015, when they announced that Warhammer Fantasy Battles was going away. So it is what it is. People are
again, Games Workshop. I've said a lot of good things about Games Workshop this episode, but like they're not clearly not infallible, and like they make a lot of mistakes, and like there's a lot of issues with the game as it currently exists, and there's probably going to be issues as soon as it launches. But I like a lot of the changes that I'm seeing.
I think the thing that you the thing that you and I put above almost everything is a clean, well understood game.
Yeah,
Like
lean
every change
game.
that we've seen has leaned into this is cleaner. This helps me understand the game. This helps the game go quicker. Not because we want again, the honest wargamer was like, oh, like what is simplicity really? Like you guys just want to show up and just roll one dice and whoever rolls a 4 up wins the game. And it's like, listen, you got to understand, like it's a scale of granularity where it's like, I don't like, there's little things in this game that I don't think are important, like the Liberator War Scroll.
Piling in specifically where you want to pile in, or like, you know what
exactly.
I mean? Like,
yeah.
There's, and we were talking about this in the car, and one thing I kind of want to repeat, like we've talked about this before. And
yeah.
The thing I want to repeat is I feel like when you remove minutia, right? Like when you remove minutia out of the game, it puts more power in the hands of the pilot, right? Like you have to, because there's less decisions, the decisions that you make are more impactful, right? Mm-hmm. And you as a pilot are now you have more responsibility. It's not just based on the rules, not just based on like how your models interact with each other. Like you as a pilot are the one that makes the difference between you winning the game and your opponent winning the game, right?
Yeah.
Like it gives you more power, because they have less power and you have less power with regards to the minutia of rule. So I honestly think it becomes a more strategic game and becomes a more, like, I feel more proud when I win a game that I know that I won, not because my rules are better than your rules, but like I outpiloted you. You know what I mean? Like that's the game that feels good. Yeah. I don't like a game where somebody runs into my trogs and they're like, oh my God, I just fall over. And I'm like, I am sorry. How can I help you score points?
Yeah, I'm sorry you made a bad choice. You know what I mean? Like that, unfortunately, like you kind of have to look at this stat block and understand you're not pushing that over. You know what I mean? And now you have to figure out, like, again, like my whole thing has been like, how do I win in a different way that isn't like just fighting trogs in the middle? Because I'm going to lose that game. Like the stats are there.
That's the game I want to play. That's the game that I've spec'd my army to play that game.
Exactly. Like, and you have good units that do it, and you have good buffs that do it, right? But yeah, I think in summation, right, we're not Games Workshop fans or simps, right? But we will give credit when credit is due when they start to modernize and implement things into the mechanics of the game that make the game better, right? Yeah. And we think that these, again, we're both like newer people, right? So we're not like I'm sure people loved like the old Liberator War Scroll that is in 3rd edition, where you have all these different options on this one little War Scroll, right? Where you can give your hero a Warhammer, and now suddenly he has 3 attacks with a 2 damage Warhammer, and that's really cool. And you can give them shields, or you can give them not shields, and like their War Scroll changes, right? But like at the end of the day, that decision does not matter at all. That's never going to matter. And it's never going to, it's the higher like up you get in like competitive play, that decision matters way less, right? Because like that unit fills a role, and that role is, it needs to be a hard thing to run over, right? Yeah. Because it's only 100 points and it's not going to be dealing damage. So it's got to be hard to push. And that's it. That's the only thing that does. So I don't care that they took away the weapon build options. I want them to take almost on every model, except for maybe the biggest. I want them to take away all of the weapon build options that would make that would matter for in-game, right? I want them to encourage people to build the kit exactly how you want to build the kit. And they did that in 40K, and they did that, and they're doing that in Age of Sigmar with the range changes and how like the weapons are changing, right? I want that, because I don't want that, like you said, that decision, although a minor decision, I don't think helps you pilot your faction any better.
No, it adds time.
It adds time for no benefit.
There's decisions you can make. There's decisions you can make in every round that seem a little more macro.
Yeah.
But that's how you win. You know what I mean? Like you're winning the macro game. I don't want to win. I don't want to like be like, oh, well, I got to go first, so I can pile into you first so you can't reach this one unit. Like, yeah, that is a tactical decision. Yeah. And it's like a good tactical decision, but it's one of those things like those types of decisions make the games go from 2 hours and it feels like a really good game to 3 hours and we get called on time because, there's too many decisions to make,
Mm-hmm. True.
So I don't know.
But
make the game shorter, make the game more lean.
Yeah, make the game, like, I'm not asking for the game to be like more simple. I'm asking for the game to play smoothly, right?
Yes.
Like, it can be complicated, and we'll probably talk about this in the next podcast where we're going to talk about War Scrolls, right? We'll talk about like complexity in the game. But that complexity can still be smooth. There can still be a lot of stuff, and they can make it smooth.
Yeah.
And other games do it. Other games do it all the time. There are smooth games out there, and it feels good that that's being implemented in the game that we happen to love and play.
Agreed.
So we'll probably end it there. James, thanks for hanging out. Everyone, thanks for hanging out. We appreciate it. There might be some emotional comments in the chat, and I don't blame you. You know what I mean?
I hope so. I hope there are emotional comments in the chat.
I don't blame you. If something happened, you know what I mean, to your specific army, you know, we're sorry. Again,
tell us how they hurt you.
Tell us on the doll where they touched you. Oh, gosh. But yeah, thanks for hanging out. We appreciate everyone. We'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.